Hello everyone. Good evening, teachers. Good evening to Ma'am Bulay. To continue our discussion about backward curriculum design, giving you an example and the benefits of using this design, today we're going into the transformative approach to curriculum planning that starts with the end goal of mind. Whether you're a teacher, a curriculum developer, or just someone passionate about education, this method will change the way you approach learning outcomes. So let's start by understanding again what is backward design by Ma'am Nicey. So rather than the traditional approach where teacher plan activities first and hope the students reach the learning goals, backward design asks us to start by identifying the end results. So what do we want our students to know, understand, and be able to do at the end of the unit? So only after that do we plan the instruction and assessment methods that will guide mga students to achieve their goals. So let's have the first. In backward design, we reverse the planning process, diba? This approach is not just innovative, it's purposeful because it ensures every steps in the lesson leads into the desired outcome. So, like, mura siya imagine trying a build a house without a blueprint. So you might start laying bricks, but without a plan, you're likely to end up with something unstable or unfinished. That's what happened when we plan lesson plans without first deciding what the learning outcome should be. So backward design starts with a clear destination and help us to build the learning journey logically and effectively. So, backward curriculum design again consists of three key stages, that is, identifying the desired result. So, what do we want the students to achieve? Two, determine an acceptable evidence. So, what will we know if they're going to achieve it? And lastly, plan learning experiences and instruction. What activities will get them there? So we'll go through each stage in a surface level so we can have like an examples of making a lesson planning. So our first stage is all about defining what is the specific goals. So we want to be a crystal clear on what students need to know and understand. So these are kanang key questions we should ask to include. So, what should student know, understand, and be able to do at the end of the unit? Next is what are the enduring understanding we hope to develop? And next is what is the essential questions will provoke deeper inquiry? So for an example, like in a photosynthesis unit, the desired results might be students should understand the process of photosynthesis and its role in the ecosystem, or they should also grasp how energy flows through living systems. So instead of cramming as much information as possible in this unit, backward design forces us to focus and depth of understanding over breadth of content. So this stage helps to prevent the common mistake of some mga teachers of teaching everything but learning little. Now let's proceed to the stage two, which is determine acceptable evidence. So now we'll decide how will we measure the desired learning objectives. So this is where we design the assessments that will show whether students have met their learning goals. So these are the kanang questions need to be asked. How will we know if the students have achieved the desired results? Like yun sa DI. So what is kanang evidence demonstrate their understanding? And lastly, should we use quizzes, projects, and presentation, or something else? So for instance, in the photosynthesis unit again, so this teacher might assess students through a combination of mga quizzes, lab experiments, and final projects where they explain how photosynthesis powers entire ecosystem. So these varied assessments gives a clearer picture of students' understanding. So now let's proceed to the next one, which is the stage three, plan learning experience and instruction. So once we know what the students need to learn and how will we measure it, we can go to design the learning activities. This is what we think about, like, these are the key questions need to be answered. So what learning activities best equip students to meet the objectives? Next is how can we engage them and promote deeper understanding, and what kind of resources and instructional methods will we use? So for an example, in continuing the kind of photosynthesis unit, the teacher might plan interactive kind of mga labs where students observe kanang plants under the light conditions, have kanang or pwede rin po kanang mga discussion on how energy transferred in the ecosystem, and even assign ka na kayong mga real world projects or project based learning, such as researching how photosynthesis impacts in the agriculture. So here is another example. Let me switch my presentation. So here is um, our presentation style explanation of each part of the lesson plan of ecosystem using the backward design. So first we have the what we call with this step one, which is the design result, establish goals. So in this section, this oh, so in this section, we define our learning objectives grounded with the relevant educational standards. Kung ano sila. So for this biology unit, we referenced next generation science standards that emphasizes the understanding relationship in ecosystems on how various factors affect biodiversity and population. So this alignment ensures our curriculum meets essential educational benchmark. Next, we have the transfer. So here in our transfer, we outline how students can apply what they learn in the real world context. Our goal for the student is to analyze and interpret ecological data, enabling them to advocate for the sustainable practices. So this means that the knowledge gain will not only be confined in the classroom, but will also empower students to make informed decision outside the school. So here, let's proceed to the meanings, which mag-start sa understanding. So we want our students to grasp the key concept about kanang ecosystem. So this includes recognizing the interdependence of organisms and understanding the flow of energy from producers to consumers to decomposers. So it's vital that they see an ecosystem kanang they see the ecosystem as dynamic systems can influence both natural and human activities. So next, let's proceed to the essential question, which is these provocative questions drive the inquiry and understanding. So they help frame out our lessons and encourage students to think critically about the ecosystem. So by exploring these questions, students will engage in a meaningful discussion that deepen their understanding of the material and its real-world application. Now let's proceed to the acquisition, which is kanina part. So let's start if mag-start na sa what will student know. So in this section, we specify the key knowledge students will acquire. So this includes mga definitions of essential terms like mga producer, consumer, and food webs, along with the insights into how different ecosystem functions. So this foundational knowledge is crucial for further exploration of the topics. Now, let's proceed to the students will be skilled at unsa man. So, we also highlights the skills students will develop throughout the unit. So, this encompasses the ability to create and analyze food webs, conduct experiments, and to measure the energy transfer and effectively present their findings. So these skills will equip them for future scientific inquiries and discussion. So now let's proceed to the next one, which is the stage two. Wala di siya maklaro. But anyways, this part is the stage two, which we start in evaluative criteria. So, in this part, we outline the criteria on which students will be evaluated. So, these include their understanding of ecosystem components and their ability to analyze and their participation in class discussion. So, clear criteria help students to know what expected them and how they going to succeed. Let's start with the performance tasks. So the performance tasks serve as a culmination of students' learning. So in this unit, students will create a detailed food web for a specific ecosystem and present it to the class. So this project is not only showcases their understanding about kind of energy flow, but also encourage them to critical thinking about its effects of human activities in the ecosystem. So what are the other evidences? Also, we includes kanang performance task, we incorporate other methods such as kanang mga quizzes and comprehensive unit tests. So this assessment will provide kanang ongoing feedback about the students' understanding and help to identify areas needing reinforcement. So they include allow self-reflection, fostering kanang ilham growth mindset of each student. Now let's proceed to the next one, which is the last kaning stage learning plan. So stage three learning plan. So finally, we can outline the specific kanang learning activities and our kanang mga instructional materials or instructional strategies that will be employed throughout the unit. So the plan includes multimedia presentation, group discussion, hands-on experiment, and research project, all designed to engage students actively and cater to various learning styles. So, for an example sa ato ang introduction sa ecosystem, we have day 1, atong gibuhat is to introduce the concept of ecosystem through engaging multimedia presentation. Day 2 focuses on the food chains and food webs, allowing students to collaborate in the small groups. Next is kanang emphasize the energy flow. Diri na ta nag-integrate og lab activities. Then day 4 dives into human impacts on ecosystem, encouraging kanang research na gyud. Next is atong day 5 wrap up the unit, review session and assessment, ensuring students have opportunity to consolidate their learning before demonstrating and understanding. So in conclusion, kanang this lesson plan uses backward curriculum design to create a comprehensive and engaging learning experience that connects students with the vital concepts of ecosystem while preparing them to the future challenges. Now, I will back our presentation to here. Now let's discuss the how um, traditional and the backward curriculum. So, in terms of focus, the traditional curriculum design focuses only for content-centered emphasis on the topics to be covered. However, in the backward curriculum design, outcomes centered. So there's a lot of information that we need to read. Um, Base mahot na tag time. So, teachers, I hope you read the differences and the comparison between the traditional curriculum design and the backward curriculum design. But here is the kanadjong main point of these two. Always remember that our traditional curriculum design is centered on delivering specific content, often following a set structured or syllabus. This approach typically kanang focuses on covering like predetermined topics, which may not always address the individual learnings needs of the or kanang goals of the students. However, in contrast, the backward curriculum design begins with clearly defined learning objectives. So these methods prioritized what students should know and be able to do by the end of the unit. But by starting with the desired result, it creates more dynamic, student-centered learning experience that encourage deeper understanding and connects lessons to real world, like mga real world applications. So this approach allows educators to tailor kanang instructions to better meet the diverse needs of their students. Now, let's proceed the benefits of the backward design. So there are five, which is clear focus on learning goals. Next is the purposeful instruction. Next is the better assessment alignment. Next is engagement. And lastly, improve learning outcome. So let's proceed to the first one, which is clear focus on learning goals. So teaching and assessment are tightly aligned with the learning objectives. So the benefit of this in the teacher's perspective, instead of trying to cover everything in the curriculum and hoping to something sticks, um, backward design forces you to hone on the most important concept that will have lasting impact to the students. So this reduces the risk of teaching for the sake of teaching, and it ensures that every lesson is purposeful. Now let's proceed kanang unsay benefit ay for the students. So a clear focus helps students to understand why they are learning certain things. This sense of direction can increase motivation because kanaging mga students kanang they see the relevance of each lessons as a building block towards the final goal. Now let's proceed to the next one, which is the purposeful instruction. So every activity is designed to guide students toward desired outcomes. So this will help to kanaging avoid the busy work. So often in kanaging atong gitawag sa traditional lesson planning, teachers might include activities that are fun or interesting but don't directly contribute to the deeper understanding. However, in the backward design forces us to how this activity helps students to meet the learning objective. So if it doesn't, it considered or replaced with something more effective. Next is kanang ihang scaffolded learning. So purposeful instruction also means that structuring activity in a way that builds upon previous knowledge. So instead of throwing random activities at the students, you provide scaffolding. So each lesson or task builds on the previous one, ensuring that students are progressing towards the final goal in a logical way. Next is student engagement, real world application, and inquiry based project increase the students' motivation and understanding. So, relevance the real life. Students are more engaged when they see how material applies to the kanang worlds around them. So, backward design often incorporates activities that connects to the content of real world scenarios. So for instance, in a science class, instead of just learning about ecosystem in abstract term, student might study the impact of for an example, deforestation and the local habitat, making the lesson plan or lesson more relevant to their own community. Next is better assessment and alignment. So clearer, what we call with this, clearer expectation for students. When the end goal is clearly defined from the start, students know exactly what's expected to them. So they're not surprised by assessment that seem disconnected from what they have learned. Instead, every assignment or project feels like natural progression towards demonstrating their understanding. Next is multiple form of assessment. Backward design encouraged the use of varied assessment like ito atong gipang mentioned na quizzes, projects, presentation, and reflection so that the student can demonstrate their understanding in a different way. This gives teachers a more holistic view of student progress and ensures that assessment measure more than just a rote memorization. Like for an example, in our photosynthesis example, instead of relying solely in the final test, the teacher might include lab experiments, creative projects, or group discussion as a part of the assessment strategy. So this ensures that students have multiple opportunities to show that they learn in like different contexts. So next is improve learning outcomes. So the backward design approach leads to the better learning outcomes. Why? Because everything from the lessons to assessment is aligned with the end goals. Students aren't just learning for the sake of passing the test. They are gaining deep, transferable knowledge that they can apply into the real world scenarios. So this depth of understanding is the hallmark of the succession of education. So backward design is a tool to achieve that. So when the students walk away from the backward design unit, they are not only know the content, but also so that's end my discussion. So as we wrap up, let's remember that backward design is a simple but powerful shift in how we approach teaching. It ensures that every part of the lessons is designed with final outcome in mind, leading to keep deeper learning and more meaningful assessment. So teachers, I encourage you to apply this in your own classroom. Start with small, try planning a single unit using backward design, and see how it changed your approach. So, thank you everyone for listening. Um, have a great evening. If you have questions, my co teacher or my partner in this discussion will give you a brief response about your questions. And you can DM me if you have any questions about my discussion today. So, thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.